Hey everyone, Nick Tuttle here at Misty Music Studio. Today I'm going to be giving you a crash course on music theory for guitarists. We're going to assume you can already find your notes, count beats, and read tabs. So we get to that point, we're ready for this video. Let's get started. You may have already learned the pentatonic scale. It's awesome. I'm going to show you the A minor pentatonic scale in case you don't already have it. Here's some tabs. You may have noticed I've also circled your C note. And if you start on the C note instead of the A note, you notice it sounds a little happier, more upbeat. Well, that's our major root. 3 things I need you to know right now. What is a key? A key is a set of notes intended to be used together musically, usually based on a scale. And then, what are relative keys? I propose to you that for every major scale, there is a minor scale with all the same exact notes. So if they have the same notes, you might ask, what makes them different? It's literally just your starting point, your root note, your emphasis, your home base. We keep coming back to this note to ground our melody. I'm going to show you what I mean. I'm going to play around with this pentatonic scale in A minor. Sounds pretty bluesy, right? I'm going to play around with this in C major now. Same scale, I'm going to use all the same notes, but my root note is C. Same notes, but it sounds pretty different. And again, this is relative keys. This is pretty powerful. We're going to keep using this throughout everything we do. So we've got a key, we've got a relative key, we've got this pentatonic scale in the key of A minor, also in the key of C major. Now, playing in different keys. Let's start by moving this pentatonic scale up and down. You can find your notes. Well, we could start it at G. That's G minor. But if we start where our pinky goes, that's our relative major root. So if G is the minor key, looks like A sharp, or you could say B flat, is the relative major key. So before moving forward to our full scales, here's what I want you to do. Practice playing the pentatonic scale in the key of A minor and C major in 12th notes on the metronome. That's this. 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 3 per click. Also in 16th notes. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 16th notes are 4 per click. All right, if you can do all that, we're ready to move on to our full major and minor scales. All right, so going back to the concept of relative keys, I've got an A minor scale and a C major scale. Those sound really different, right? They have all the same notes, again. So using this concept of relative keys, we can use the major and minor scale in relative keys. That's 2 scales in the same key. Whatever key you're in, it has a relative key. And we can use those 2 scales, major and minor, starting at different points in the guitar, just those 2 scales to cover the entire fretboard of the whole guitar. Here's what I mean. A minor. C major. A minor starting on the A string at 12. C major. It's the whole fretboard. I mean, I could go lower, but lead guitar pretty much stay above the 5th fret. You can see how this is very powerful. You can move these scales up and down, starting at different root notes to get different keys. And again, I highly recommend before moving forward, we want to be able to play these scales to the metronome. In 12th notes, 1 and a 2 and a 3 and in 16th notes, 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a to the metronome. Another thing you're going to want to be comfortable doing is using these scales, the pentatonic, the major scale, and the minor scale, to improvise melodies over backing tracks in any key. You just move the scale up and down. You line up your root note with the root note of the key, and all the notes should sound like they're in key. Here's a quick example to show you what I mean before we move forward. Improvising melodies. Fun stuff. You can do all that with nothing but practicing what I just showed you. If you feel comfortable improvising melodies in any key on your major, minor, and pentatonic scale, and also playing to the metronome in 12th and 16th notes, we're probably ready for some chord theory. So let's move on here. All right. So weirdly, for chord theory, we're going to have to come back to our scales. We're going to learn a pattern, a formula, that will give you the notes in any scale, in any key, on any instrument. Actually, I have a separate one for the major scale. Here it is. Root, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. And one for the minor scale. Root, whole, half, whole, half, whole, whole. So using these sequences of half and whole steps, you plug in your root of any key underneath the R, and you just go a whole step or a half step, whatever it says, to get the next note. You should end with the same note you started on. So we've got a root, which is a starting place, and then a sequence of 7 steps, giving us 7 unique notes, and ending with our root at the 8th interval. This is good for every key. All right, so now that we can find the notes in a key, I gotta throw one more formula at you. Don't worry, you don't have to memorize these. I've got PDFs in the description below, so you can just download them, or you can pause the video, whatever you feel like doing. You don't need to memorize these. You can look them up when you need them. All right, so I've got one that works here for every minor key, and one that works for every major key. And as you can see, relative keys overlap. Not only do relative keys have all the same notes in the key, they also have the same chords. So you could get the same chords in the keys of A minor and C major, but for this example, I've chosen E minor and G major. One thing you may have noticed is that the minor root is always 3 half steps below the major root, and vice versa, in every key, on every instrument. So anyways, we plug in our notes, and we plug in our chord types. We've got major, minor, and a diminished chord. Most people ignore the diminished chord because it sounds kind of ugly, but we're essentially left with 6 good chords in the key, 3 majors and 3 minors. So for the key of E minor, E minor, G, A minor, B minor, C, D, we're back home. I also have this nice sheet for you to learn some chord shapes. Essentially, you find the root you need, and whether it's on the E or the A string, I have a shape here for you on this sheet. And you can look at this whenever you need it, pull up the PDF or pause the video. So before moving forward with more chord theory, this is another good stopping point. We're going to want to get comfortable improvising chords, especially bar chords, like using these shapes, in any key, really. So I'm going to show you what I mean in the key of E minor. We can play the chords in any order. could take a lot of practice. I know this is a short video, but I'm kind of covering years of guitar playing here, and believe it or not, is mostly time spent with your hands on the guitar, just practicing this stuff. If you feel good about being able to improvise chord progressions in any key, stay on time with these 6 chords, the 3 majors and the 3 minors in any key, I think we're probably ready for some more chords now. So let's move forward here to advanced chord theory. All right, so you can find 3 major chords and 3 minor chords in any key. They sound pretty good, but that's just 6 chords. You're gonna get sick of them. So here's some more. So let's take a look at our major and our minor chords once again. For all of these shapes, the root is the first note, where your first finger starts. The next note played is the 5th in key. The note after that, usually where your pinky is the octave. That is the same as the root note, just up. And then, after that, on usually the 4th string over from your starting point is the 3rd. We can change the 8 to a 7 to get major and minor 7th chords. A major 7th is a half step back from the octave. A minor 7th is a whole step back from the octave. We can change the 3rd in key, the 3rd in the chord, that's the 4th string over from the start of the chord. We can move it up or down to get sus2 or sus4. Now here's a little tricky. I'm not going to give you shapes for sus2 and sus4. You just have to stay in key. Take, for example, the C major chord. Root, 5th, octave, 3rd. We can change our octave to a major 7th as a half step back from the octave to get C major 7. C major 7. For sus chords, we could change the 3, there's the 3, to a 4 in key, or to a 2 in key, and back to a 3rd. That's sus chords. Sus means suspended 3rd, and then the 2 or 4 is which one are you moving to. For minor 7th chords, let's use E minor for example. The 7th is a whole step back from the octave, as it is in the minor scale. So you find your octave, move it a whole step down, which means your first finger is going to bar. E minor 7. Now this one is really weird, the dominant 7th shape. Let's go to the D major chord. And dominant 7th essentially means major chord, minor 7th. You could also think of it as major chord, flat 7th. And what that means is our 7th is going to be a whole step back instead of a half step back, even though it's based on a major chord. So D major, D dominant 7, tabs being 5, 7, 5, 7. There's one dominant 7th chord in every key. You can't play the major 7th chord here, it's out of key. Before the minor root is the dominant 7th. That's true in every key. In every key, the one dominant 7th chord comes before the minor root. Every other 7th chord in key will line up. If it's a major chord, major 7th, minor chord, minor 7th. Diminished chord, don't worry about it. All right, that last part, that's a lot of information. Here's what I want you to do before moving forward. This could take months or years of practice. It's completely normal. It's just hard. But using your sus chords and your 7th chords, start thinking of them as variants of your major and minor chords. From there, you can start to embellish your major and minor chord progressions with your 7ths and sus chords, and even replacing them entirely. Replacing your major and minor chords with sus and 7th chords in progressions where you feel like it. I'm going to give you a quick example of what I mean, and then we'll move on. That's fun. Yeah, so if you can embellish your chords, especially on bar chords, and you feel like you've got a good grip on major chords, major 7th, minor 7th, dominant 7th, sus2, sus4. It's a lot. You can wind up with like 23, 24, something like 23 chords in a key that way. We're probably ready to start playing out of key, tastefully. With this modified pentatonic scale pattern, notice that lots of out-of-key notes sound great when you aren't lingering on them. We'll go back to the key of A minor here. Two other scale patterns that might give you some really cool ideas are the harmonic minor scale. That is a regular minor scale with a sharp 7th in the key of A. Why don't we play it like this? It's just one note out of key. It sounds very menacing. I love it. I think it's also might be like the traditional Middle Eastern scale or something like that. Also, here's a Mixolydian scale. We also call it the Jerry Garcia scale. Not the mode, I mean scale. So, major key, flat 7th, Mixolydian scale. We'll use C. Of course, by this point, if you're really comfortable doing everything we talked about earlier, you probably don't need to rely on scale patterns to play out of key. Just make the noises that are in your heart. And, it's art. So if it sounds good, it is good. If you like it, and you're aware of the fact that it's out of key, you're not doing anything wrong. Just play it. I want to show you some quick examples of just playing a little out of key real quick. As far as playing chords out of key, I've got a few suggestions for you, but it's very much a journey of discovery. I'll give you a couple of things I like to do that I think are fun that I picked up from artists I listen to. In the key of C major, I really like that F minor chord. It's not in key. One other thing I really like to do that I think is fun and sounds cool is to put a dominant 7th chord between the in-key dominant 7th and the minor root. So for example, in the key of E minor, our dominant 7th chord falls on D. So I would put one on D sharp and back to the root. Show you what I mean. Thank you all so much for listening. I know this has been an insane amount of information in a very short amount of time, so please feel free to watch this video again, download the PDFs, pause the screen, look at the tabs. It's just hard. Again, most of these things took me years and years to work on, so it should take you at least a few months probably. If you'd like to support me, I have a plethora of artist aliases that I would love for you to check out on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music, all that. I've got Fractal Goblins, an alt-metal goblin band, Iridescent Space Penguin for electro, Nick Tuttle for a bit of everything. Thank you again, and hit me up in the comments if you need help, okay? I'm happy to help. I'll see you soon.